Good day, everyone. This is John Scarborough. Back over here in this little thicket. It's a bamboo thicket we got back in here. This is actually where we're thinking about running pigs eventually. We're thinking we're going to let them run into this area eventually, but we haven't got to that just yet. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the drought that's coming up, and I kind of wanted to use some of the examples that we can see under this thicket here. Like you can tell the sun can't get under there. I want to use some of the examples to show kind of what we're looking for to help protect us against the drought. Now I myself have not been raised animals through a drought in a productive manner. So what I mean, or in a production manner is what I meant to say. But I did do it when I was in Texas. We actually had a pretty good drought there, and we actually did raise animals, and I was exposed to the wrong way, to some of the worst ways of doing it, which is what most people are accustomed to and what most people see. But now I'm actually raising animals in a different way, and I think a drought's going to be hard for anybody. It doesn't matter how you do it or what you do. I think it's going to be hard, but I can already see the difference in the pastures and stuff that we're growing. We had 2 weeks in May of 90-degree weather, and then we finally had rain, and it came down, but it came down hard. And we had a lot of rain, but it came down hard. And I don't think that most people around me caught any of that rain. I feel like that we did pretty decent where we're at. There was actually one place I actually went out and brush hogged ahead of time, and I'll have another video. I think I'm going to talk a little bit briefly on that. But that was something I did, and I really was glad that I did. But what I wanted to use is this example just a little bit. So I wanted to show you this soil underneath here. Now you can see just how wonderful this soil is. And this is what a lot of people talk about. This is why a lot of people promote forest and things like that over grasslands, is because of this soil right here. This is there's a lot of humus in that. There's a lot of organic matter, but there's a lot of earthworm humus that comes from that. The soil is sticky. It absorbs the water extremely well. I mean, this kind of soil right here will catch any kind of rain at all. I mean, any waterfall. It would take a tremendous amount of waterfall to keep this from absorbing it. And then even so, even if it didn't absorb it, all of this outside stuff right here, this would actually slow the water down. So, and this right here is really a really good example of some of the other videos I've done on clay. I've done a lot of videos on clay soil, and the reason this is a good example is a lot of this actually used to be clay. And I know that because I know what the soil is all the way around it, but I also know it by digging straight down. I can see soil right under clay right up underneath it. And then I also, the biggest reason that I know it is because I know the person that came in here and actually laid clay all out in this area, because just right above me is actually an oil field site, and they actually, so I know the person that did all the work there, and they actually laid all that entire hill in clay, and then they said that they had actually come back this way in clay a good bit. So as far as I can understand, and there's an earthworm right there, as far as I can understand, all of this was clay at one point. And so, but there's humus and everything else that builds on top. Okay, so the example I want to show is a lot of people suggest that you can't get that with grasslands, and the reason is because you don't get this. You don't look up in your dense forest and see that the sun is covered and you're nice and shaded, and then the ground is covered. But that's actually wrong. It's just not something that we can walk out in. Now, the grasslands that they're speaking about, the places that are grazed clean down to the bottom, that actually is the case. But the grasslands that I'm speaking about is well-managed property. It's kind of funny. I'm going to detour just a little bit off, and then I'm going to come right back to it. I was actually talking to a landowner, one of my landowners, and he's a elderly gentleman, and he's got a piece of land, and I was actually talking to him about possibly planting peas in there for the cattle to graze on, and he said, oh no, that'll never work. The cows will keep it grazed down so much to the point that it will never mature. And the reason that I found that comical is because that's the way most people, that's the way he was accustomed to raising cows, is to cows, you never close the gate. You leave all your gates open and they can go in there at all times. And so I found it kind of comical, because it's like, I don't even think that way. With our place, 96% of our farm has no animals on it, probably a very large portion of the time, okay? And when they do get animals on it, it's a very large impact of animals, and then we pull them right back off. So that's not something that I'm accustomed to myself, is that way, but that's something that he could not even fathom, is how I could plant peas out there without the cows getting rid of it. And the way you do that is just by planting the peas and not letting the cows on there until after it matures and gets to that state. So that's what the grass does. So the grass actually does like this, like here, like imagine you're an earthworm, or you're a microbe, or you're even an ant or something like that, even a rabbit. I'm probably about the size of a rabbit. If this was grass, okay? If that was grass, this would probably be about what a rabbit would look like in my pastures when they look up. It's shaded, it's covered, and the ground, most importantly, is the ground is covered in, okay, so these are leaves. This is what the ground is covered in here. It's leaves. So what is the ground covered in for me when I've got grasslands? Well, the ground is covered in grass clippings from where I've brush hogged in the past. It's covered in grass, in trampled grass and weeds where I've mob grazed and knocked a good bit of it down. And it's also covered in grass that was left behind from the previous year that we used as stockpile, and then a small portion of it was left behind that winter. And that's why I'm a big proponent, and even when I'm stockpiling, not taking every last bit of it in that winter. I like to leave a little bit behind, because that really helps you when your rainy season comes, especially in our part of the world where the ground really never freezes, or if it does, it's not for very long at all. So as soon as those rainy seasons come, if you've got just bare soil right up underneath there because your cows ate everything that was there, man, that will really start to wash your soils out. So that is huge, is leaving some of that residual behind. But anyway, back to the topic is kind of all of that residual. It looks just like this, okay, except it's grass. But what it does, it creates the same thing underneath. It creates the same environment, okay. It's not tall trees from our perspective, because from our perspective, we can't stand underneath it. But the soil is getting the same reaction. When you look at this right here, like when I touch this soil, I'll give you an example. When I touch this soil is very cool, okay? I can go out to my pasture right now and I can find an area, and I can't let you do it because you're not here. But when I go out to other areas of my pasture, I've actually pulled grass back and pulled things back, and it's hard to get down in there. It's really difficult to get to it because the grass is so thick. But I'll pull stuff back, and I can actually touch it, and it's actually cool to the touch, okay? And the reason is because it's doing the same thing as these bamboo are doing in this bamboo thicket, okay? It's kind of that same example. So I wanted to discuss that just a little bit with the upcoming drought. That's what you want, okay? Even if you have bad soil, okay? If you have bad soil, especially clay soils and stuff, a lot of people in my area that watch my videos and stuff, they have a lot of clay soils. And if you have clay soils and you have bad areas, then you're going to get, it's going to be harder, that much harder for you. So the real important key is the organic matter, okay? Is having that organic matter that is there. Even if you've got clay soil, even if you don't have good soil underneath, that organic matter that's left there, that is what, when the rain comes down and hits it, that's what penetrates and will allow it doesn't just immediately start gouging. Instead, it hits this and it can absorb into some of that. Plus, it will wash down more evenly. Now, it's not perfect, okay? It's not a perfect system, but it creates a lot more residual. And that's why a lot of times when you're driving by on the highway or something, when they've done a lot of brand new highway work, you'll actually see they will actually put ground cover, and then they will cover that in hay. And that is to help hold the ground before the grass comes up, okay? And I actually did that on my driveway here recently. I had built my driveway, and then I had to get my ditch just right for the water to run down in there. And the problem with making that ditch just right is it's all clay right there where I ran through. The ditch was all clay, but yet I had to dig it all away. Well, then the rains start coming. Well, I unrolled hay back and forth in there, okay? And what that actually did, it actually not only did it create a barrier, like something organic matter to sit right there, and it gave an environment for the microbes, and then also helped the grass to start to come up, okay? It did all of that, but the most important thing is that it left the ground somewhat moist rather than hard, okay? That's the biggest problem, especially when it comes to clay soils, is the ground itself will become less malleable, okay? So this right here, this is actually soft, okay? You see that right there? If I were to completely expose this, even being good soil, that would become hard enough that it would take a lot of rain to start softening that back up before it would then start soaking in, okay? I'm sure a lot of people, excuse me, I'm sure a lot of people have seen where you pour some water on some sand or something, it's dry sand, and it will just bead right off. But once it gets wet, it will absorb all of it down in there, and sometimes even too much if you're talking about sand, okay? So, but that's the key, is the keeping that covered, all right? So I really hope that helps a lot of people. Is when you're coming into that drought, there's two things you want to think about. You want as much grass coming up as you can, but you don't want dry grass. If it starts to dry out too much, it might be good to get it back into a vegetative state without cutting out too much, okay? And that's if you have access to a brush hog. So you want grass as tall as you can get it without being dry, and then you want organic matter underneath, okay? Those two things right there can help tremendously with holding water to your soil. So anyway, guys, like I said, hope that helped. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always.